Hello. I just finished DMing 2 years of Curse of Strahd, and I gotta say, as written, it kind of sucks. The game isn't friendly for new players at all. When you start the module, your characters are going to be brought to the village of Barovia, not to be confused with the much larger land of Barovia that this entire campaign takes place in. In the village of Barovia, the DM, you need to make a decision right away. Are you going to put your characters through the dungeon known as Death House to bring them up to level 3, or are you going to start your players at a higher level? Level 3 to 5 being the options provided in the manual. If you go with Death House, I don't recommend it for your newer players. It is incredibly overtuned. There are characters in there that can do damage to your squishy NPCs in one stroke. Like their average amount of damage is enough to clip your wizard, sorcerer, warlock, etc. So it's just not a good idea for new players. If your players are more experienced, then it's a good opportunity. It's an opportunity for them to try out their new classes, but knowing the strategies and group techniques they develop through D&D, they'll be able to overcome this. But without that camaraderie and teamwork that you're kind of supposed to build up through the campaign, if they don't have that right off the bat, Death House is not going to be a good time for you and your party. So, regardless if you do Death House or not, the main goal in the village of Barovia is to meet with Irina and Ismark. Your players may have gotten a forged letter at the start of the campaign asking them for assistance. This or the man who's dead, the father of Ismark and Irina, is the writer of the letter. Um, if Ismark or Irina see that letter, they immediately can tell it's a fake. It's not their father's handwriting, so that adds a layer of mystery and intrigue, if you will. But the primary mission in Barovia is to get your players to want to escort Irina out of Barovia somewhere safe. This is the opportunity to introduce Strahd. When they get to the village of Barovia and they come to the mayor's house, Bergenmaster is what they call it in the campaign module. When they get to the Bergenmaster's house, they can see the claw marks, and this place has been under siege for quite some time. If they're able to win the trust over of Ismark or Irina, they learn that their father has recently passed. Irina has been bitten twice by Strahd already. He's actively seeking her out. He wants to court her. They're going to ask the players, to go with them to the cemetery and perform a funeral. At the church, they're going to learn that the local priest, his son, was part of an adventuring party that went to attack Strahd a year earlier. He got bit by Strahd and turned into a vampire, so he's being kept underneath the church floors, locked up, deprived of blood. Very cool opportunity for your characters or your players to kind of demonstrate what morality they have. My players realized he was a vampire, were told that, he was resisting the urge and that he was only feeding on animals, no humans. They decided to torch the church with Doru, and I believe it's Father Donovich, right? That's the one in Barovia. Um, that was their moral decision there. But when they get to the cemetery, as written, that is when Strahd first formally appears for your players. He's going to interrupt the funeral, maybe at the end, clap and offer his condolences to Irina and Ismark. Again, I think that this requires DM discretion because, as the campaign written suggests, is that the DM is supposed to have both Strahd and Rahadin, his dusk elf servant, Chamberlain, um, appear, and they're incredibly powerful. Rahadin has a 30-foot area of effect deathly chorus that if any player enters 30 feet of his presence, they are immediately hit with the screams of 100 dead souls and take, 3d6, 4d6 something psychic damage, maybe more. But if your characters are level 1 or level 3, they may only have 20 hit points. And so, like, this in of itself, just approaching them, like to do the RP you want your characters to do, just approaching Strahd and Rahadin could result in a kill. And that's exactly what happened in my campaign. The wizard, they know this is Curse of Strahd. You want your care players to RP. She began to walk towards Strahd, completely respectful, to start a dialogue. She entered Wahadin's wing. Now, I didn't, clip her. I thought that would have been bad form there. But it knocked her out. It put a fear in them. And I understand that aspect of it as written, like to put the fear of it, but they're so young, like to kill, and you can't be scared to kill your players. Like it shouldn't be something the DM seeks out. But at the end of the day, this is Curse of Strahd. This is a challenging module. You cannot be scared to do that. But it can't be cheap.
Who has a better story? And Brand the Broken.
And there are so many cheap deaths in this campaign. And Death House, I won't, read the module. You have to do that. But just the monsters in there are just can TPK a party, no problem. And then going to the cemetery, not that they should try to be aggressive towards Strahd, because that would be a bad thing. But just walking towards them, Wahadin's Ailey effect. I mean, I just think it's cheap, and so I'm going to advise strongly that DM discretion be used in a lot of these portions because it is so cheap. And so moving on with the cheapness, presumably your characters are going to head, or your players are going to move towards the village of Valakai next. That is the main and major city in the land of Barovia. There's other places your players are going to go, but that is the largest city and is going to have the most normal people and vendors and what you would expect to find in any kind of populated city. When they get there, they find out that the Bergen Master or Mayor of Valakai is a tyrant of sorts. He has a mandatory carnival, party, festival, whatever you want to call it, weekly or bi-weekly. And if the residents don't celebrate or aren't happy enough, they can be jailed or punished. Some real North Korean vibes born here. That's not a problem. That's interesting intrigue. This is a dangerous land. And I personally like, trying to get into the psyche of the residents of Barovia. Like, what would it be like to be a person that was born into this land, that knows all of its lore and history, knows that you're trapped in this hell, if you will, that your soul can't ever escape, and that some people are born without souls. And so, like, there's this whole aspect of like you're lucky enough to have a soul, so you really get to feel and experience life, but it's life under, a vampire tyrant that has a bunch of undead minions and really bad folks working in league with him, and the people that aren't in league with him might be just as bad in some regards, and you see that here. But where this gets cheap is the main quest in Valakai is your players are going to come in. If they can avoid interacting with the Bergen Master at all, that is like the story's ideal because he is paranoid. He's going to want to watch your players. And when your players find out what's really going on in the city, he's completely ignorant of that and is scared to death that if the players reveal that the city will fall into chaos. And what that is the players are taken to the main church in Valakai, the Church of Saint Andrew, and they meet Father Lucian. And Father Lucian, is this holy priest, and there were bones of Saint Markovia present in the church that consecrated the entire area. The bones have been stolen. No one knows where they went, and there's a resident who's in league with Strahd that is going to launch an attack during one of the festivals if the bones aren't brought back because they know everyone's going to go to the church. And so if the church isn't consecrated ground as everyone expects it to be, they're going to flood in there, and then the vampire spawn can go in and slaughter everyone. Real good time. So your players want to avoid that outcome, and they accomplish this by finding the bones and returning them to the church to be reconsecrated. The problem is that the bones are, as written, are in the coffin maker's shop, and the coffin maker is in league with Strahd. He's been, mind controlled and is working to assist him in this. And so he had some local that worked with the gravedigger, it may even been the gravedigger, steal the bones and then bring them to him. And they're at the coffin maker shop. But the problem is your characters are maybe level 4 right at this point. Okay. So if you let them do Death House and they've left Death House as level 3, they've left Valakai and they're coming in here. So they're level 3, level 4 tops when they get to Valakai and this event takes place. They get to the coffin maker shop and there are 6 vampire spawn inside the coffins in the coffin maker shop, and it's virtually impossible to avoid interacting with them. Like the coffin maker is either going to alert them if the players go upstairs, they're going to alert them. It's not a good time. And if they, you're running this with 4 level 4 characters, even level 5. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. When I did this as a player like 5 years ago, and we had a really big party. I think there were actually 7 players, which is absurd. I didn't DM it, but don't do that. It's a nightmare. 7 players is too much, especially for this module. Just the action economy. It brings it to a grinding halt. Like it slows the game so much. So I don't recommend going beyond 5 players. Maybe if you're a good DM and your players can be on top of it, you can get away with 6. But I think 5 is really the max that any average DM can handle with this module. And so, if you only have 4 or 3 and then you're in the situation, and I know you're supposed to scale down monsters and whatnot, but DMs aren't created equally, and there's nothing in the module that says if you only have 3 players, remove 2 of these vampire spawns, or if you have 5, add an extra 2. It's up to DM discretion. And let's be honest here, the path of least resistance is the one most taken. So most DMs are going to, if they're doing this virtually, they're certainly going to rely on the pre-manufactured assets and encounters. And if you're doing this old school from the book on, a tabletop with drawings or figurines you've created, more power to you. But again, if you're investing that much time into creating the art and the world, you're probably less inclined to actually modify the base content because all of your energy and time is going into creating the items that your players are going to receive. So, I mean, maybe you're that A plus awesome DM who can put 40 hours a week into making his weekly game that awesome, but most aren't. And so relying on the material, these cheap TPKs where your players show up and then boom, there's like an unwinnable situation that just doesn't sit well with me. And, this is an opportunity as a DM to reinforce to your players that every situation does not have to be a battle. Like they can flee and they probably should flee some situations because, uh, you know, but that's what this accomplishes. But how you as a DM manage this event cascades entirely and it sets the basis for so much more of the Curse of Strahd campaign. So, assuming your players survive the Coffin Hunter or Coffin Maker shop and get back to the church, meet Father Lucian, and reconsecrate the bones, they're essentially free to leave Valakai. Like the main quest points are hit here. There's another NPC, Lady Fiona Walker, who is in league with Strahd that can play some drama here, and there's a lot of separate material that's created by third-party content creators, Mandy Mod, Dragna Carta, just to name the 2 probably most well-known, that really allow you to beef up and enhance the NPCs and quests within Valakai. But as written, that is the main thing to accomplish in Valakai. Get the bones, consecrate them when they're gone. Your players probably at this point are going to want to head down towards the Wizards of the Vine. It's a sect of Raven Druids who they probably meet in Valakai because they actually own the main inn in Valakai. So it's an opportunity for, as after they get the bones, oh yeah, come down to our winery in Southwest Barovia. And when they get there, they learn, more about the land. This is where all the wine in Barovia is made. And what's happened is there was a gem that a band of bad druids have recently stolen from them. It's kind of like the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, those 3 Kali stones that like grow things. Well, there's 3 stones in Curse of Strahd, and this is the first one that your players are going to come across. And so the druids, once your players get to the vinery, this is the cheapest kill zone in the entire game, bar none. So your players, they've been humping, right? If they left Valakai, they've had to take most of a day's march to get from Valakai to the entrance to where the Wizards of the Vine are at. And when they get there, there's like 30 of these plants burrowed underground that each essentially have the magic missile spell. Like they can shoot one dart per round. Your characters are level 4, probably level 5 at this point, so they're a little stronger. But if you're a wizard, you're talking 35, 40 hit points max at this point. So when you get there, um, unless your characters have incredible perception and are able to roll like and more importantly they make the decision to try to investigate or perceive the area. If they just have normal passive perception and just come on this because they were invited, and as soon as they touch that soil, these plants come up. And again, if you have a 4 or 5 party team or group that you're running this campaign for, the action economy there can clip people really, really fast. And so they show up, 30 of these plants pop up, they get win on the initiative roll, so they get to act first. All 30 of these little things, and to take it a step further, the game says you can group them together, so they act in groups. But instead of having 30 plants shoot a 1d4 dart at a character, you have 6 or 7 plants doing it, and you're just rolling 6d4 and tallying up that damage. So it doesn't matter whether or not you scroll through and have each of them do it individually, or you take the book suggesting that maybe grouping them up. It's still 24 potential damage coming at a player um in just 4 or 5 turns, and there's 30 of these sons of bitches. So you get 6 or 7 of those things in one group, they hit, they do 20 points of damage. Next group comes up, these aren't smart creatures, but they're going to attack the thing that's up front, your wizard or whoever. Boom boom boom, they're dead. And it's like, I don't want to take away from the danger of Barovia because that's there, but there's so much more of that. Like there is no question that your players are going to have dangerous, very difficult encounters. The encounter with Strahd, the last boss fight, incredibly difficult. So it's not as if you're depriving your players of a challenge. When you take away their agency, when it's like, oh, sorry, you were playing the game as designed, but you were the unlucky one that all 30 of these creatures you didn't know were there popped up and attacked at once, and they shredded your body and you're gone. It's not gonna leave a positive taste in most of your players. And that's why I feel it's a very cheap encounter. But moving on from here, you get to what I think is one of the best encounters in the game is right up the hill. Is that after you get to the Wizards of the Vine and you defeat the few druids and their plants that are present, the druid family, the good ones, say, hey, they stole our ruby, one of the Kali stones that makes all of our vines grow for our wine, and they're up on this hillside creating this giant tree monster that is going to wreak havoc on us and Valakai if you let it. And so your players go up to Yesterhill where they see that Nether Splinter is being created. He's this giant, like Gulthias tree, like ant type creature that they're trying to cast a ritual using the stone they stole to revive him. It's on your players to interrupt the ritual. If they are able to successfully interrupt the ritual, then the tree guy, he never forms. He's never gonna come down and attack your players. But if your players dick around and they don't interrupt or they don't get all the casters, then he might come to life, and that's a really cool fight. And that's not cheap because your players like have an opportunity here. They came up on the hill, they were able to visualize what's going on here. These evil druids are casting a spell to bring this tree to life. They know that they need to stop that. If they choose not to stop it because they want to do this or that, that's what D&D is about, player choices. But compared to a few miles down the hill back at the vinery, they walk in and as soon as they show up, 30 plants show up and cheap shot them. It's a difference there. And one's empowering player agency and one I feel is taking it away. And that's why I feel it's cheap. But if your players are able to resolve the conflict at Yesterhill, recover the stone, bring it back to the good druids at the bottom of the hill. They're very thankful and they recommend that your players head eastward toward the swamps of Berez, where Baba Lysaga resides. She has the second stone. She's taken that stone and put it inside a magic hut. Again, this is a very fun encounter. This is like your players can die in this encounter, but it's through their decisions and dice roll, not through some cheap mechanic. So similar to the plants showing up at the binary when you get to that area, when you get to the swamp area, your characters are going to see the hut. They're going to see that this is a swampy marsh area, and if they've been paying attention, they're going to have a hunch that the hut is animated. And if they don't know that, the moment they do something to attack Baba Lysaga or get her attention, that hut is going to activate and it's going to begin to attack your players. Now, the goal isn't to destroy the hut. The ultimate goal is to have like your rogue or some nimble character with good dexterity get inside the hut and then remove the gem that's embedded in the floor, and that deactivates the hut. And that way your party can throw all their attention at Baba Lysaga, who is a very challenging fight. She flies in a hollowed out giant skull above the party. She has true sight, so she can see most of what's going on through the fog. Your players can't. But it's a difficult and challenging fight. They need to get her down out of the skull to damage her. They need to disable the hut because the hut can do incredible damage to them because it can reach across the entire map with its roots. And so your players are in this situation where it's dangerous, but like they immediately know the stakes. Like it's not like they walk in and then the hut's tentacles pop up and smack all of them all at once and does 8d6 damage to every character. Like that would be no bueno. And that's what happens at the Vinery, and that's not what happens at the Swamps of Berez. So I think it's a much better encounter. There's a lot of RP here. Lysaga is the wet nurse of Strahd. She loves him. She thinks she's his true mother. He wants nothing to do with her. Like she's an afterthought. Like her suffering and wanting to be loved by him and him keeping her at arm's length is fun to him. And it's interesting to see that kind of cruelty compared to the more brute force of cruelty that your players are going to learn are inflicted, not if not on them, through the residents of Barovia. And just it creates opportunities for a DM to create good story. And that's always a positive thing when you can get your players invested into the story, and that's through including them and making story that allows them to have their moments and allows their characters to stand up and shine. um and while I'm on that topic, like that's another big gripe I have with this campaign is that it's not very conducive to giving everyone a moment to shine. If you're a paladin, the Sun Sword is it. Like that is the sword made of light. You need it to beat Strahd, essentially. Um, if you don't have a paladin in your group or a fighter or someone who can wield that sword, you should, because it's that crucial to defeating Strahd. He gets hit by that. He no longer is able to recover health because sunlight does radiant damage. He's in sunlight, so he has disadvantage on attack rolls while he's made within sunlight from the sword. It's just a very important part of the final boss fight, and it's for the paladin. And if you have a fighter, maybe you can work it out, but like that's it. It's a magic sword. Your wizard, your warlock, your sorcerer, your rogue, they aren't going to have this big one-handed sword and swing it around. It's just not likely. And they have like the icon of Ravenloft, which again can help with like a priest type character or cleric that has sunlight effects, and that's nice. But outside of that, there's nothing else. So if you're not, the goody two shoes paladin of the group, with so many of these stories, like put that in, like Dragonlance, for example, the main weapon, the Dragonlance, it's meant for the paladin. It's very similar to the Sun Sword, and has this holy relic that has these godlike powers, and it's for the paladin to wield, and that's fine. Like that's a core part of D&D. But me as a DM and as a player, I like to be included, and I like to include my players when they're playing. So I tried to define weapons, maybe not quite as powerful as the Sun Sword, but weapons and items that were comparable to that bolstered their character's image. But once they dropped up Perez, they can either head north of there and go to Argynvost, which isn't really central to the game. It's got some cool story. There was a silver dragon that led a group of paladins here centuries ago. The dragon lost to Strahd in a great battle. Strahd, like, severed his spirit, desecrated the ground that he died on. All his paladins have been cursed as race and just kind of hang out, hating life in this ruined castle. The skull of Argynvost is in Castle Ravenloft. So for them to even be able to complete this part of the module as DM, you would have to facilitate a way for them to come to Castle Ravenloft and then find the skull and be able to retrieve that and take it back to Argynvost. So whether or not you do Argynvost, it really doesn't matter. A nice beacon of light will shoot to the sky and remain for the campaign if you do that, but it's neither here nor there. The other major area your players are going to go to is the village of Kresik. Now, attached or annexed to the village of Kresik is the Abbey of St. Markovia, and that is where the abbot resides. All throughout the campaign, if your players get disease, poisoned, if they get lycanthropy, if they get bit by a werewolf, um, you know, it takes a greater restoration spell to remove that, according to the player's handbook. So, you're going to be like level 8 or 9 to even have that. So that's like late in the game, not going to help you early on. To kind of give hope, the game suggests you keep referencing the abbot as this holy healer that's present in the abbey. When you get there, you find out that the abbot is totally insane. He's a diva or an angel who's gone mad through his centuries being stuck here and is convinced the only way to save Strahd is to build him through corpse repair the perfect bride. He wants Irina slash Tatiana Soul to put in there if she's with you. That's a little side part. But other than that, he's happy to just build a golem for Strahd to hopefully love. Your players know it's madness. Everyone but the abbot knows this is a really bad idea, but how that plays out is up to your players. But it's a cool opportunity just to see the corruption of that. But other than having the abbot and then seeing all the mongrel folk, these like animal people hybrids he's created that again he sees as endearing and loving, creating like a half dog, half goat, half horse, whatever person, the pretty much the whole gambit of the animal kingdom in there. Um, it's a neat little place, and but it doesn't add much to the overall story other than you've built this abbot up as this great healer throughout the entire campaign, and when they finally get to Kresik when they're like level 7 and 8, so close towards the end, um, that's where you know they can be healed, this magic healer, and then they finally get there and he's gone absolutely insane. So it's cool, but other than that coolness, it doesn't add much because there's just not a whole lot there, unless you're putting one of the magic artifacts located there, like the icon of Ravenloft. If you put it there, then that would be a nicer and way to enhance that environment. And then lastly, is the Amber Temple, right? That is my favorite place in Curse of Strahd, the Amber Temple. It's dangerous, um, but the players know that when they go there. Like, it's been built up, and when you narrate it to the DM, they inherently know that this place is evil and corrupt, and it's going to try to make them evil and corrupt. And so, as they navigate the Amber Temple and touch the sarcophagi and interact with the dark vestiges that are trapped there, if they're able to find Exithantar, and if they are foolish, brave, you decide, enough to perform a greater restoration on him to restore the Lich's memory and learn even more about the Amber Temple, there's just so many cool story elements that can tie in from this place. My critique of it, though, is that you almost have to go with the non-source material for the dark vestiges. Again, I'm a huge advocate for player agency, but this campaign has been rewarding players for like searching and investigating and interacting with stuff throughout the entire time. When they get to the Amber Temple, this is the only time that it's really gonna negatively affect them, because depending on how the DM runs it, like, they don't know the bargain they're making, what powers are going to be, what the cost is going to be. And so, especially as I referenced earlier, if you're a player who like been angry this whole time because you've been doing this for 6 months, and the paladin's got his sun sword, the cleric's got his icon of Ravenloft, and the DM threw a bone to his girlfriend and she's got a really cool weapon, but you don't have anything, the Amber Temple might be the place where the characters are players like, hey, this is my opportunity to get something really, really cool. Let's see what happens. And they touch Amber sarcophagi and they immediately become evil under the DM's control. And I have a problem with that because again, you take away the agency. If you say, hey, John, the evil vestige, you can feel he's attempting to control you, and that if you allow him in, you may lose yourself to his evil, you know, influence and corruption. And John says, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. Player agency. But that's not necessarily the way this is done. And as a player, I was with a DM who did not um, advertise the risk and rewards. And so characters, players were made evil, um, and he didn't take control of them. That was the bone he threw us. But it's like, if I had known that I'm making a deal with a dark entity here, I wouldn't have done that. And you can say, well, what did you expect touching an amber sarcophagi? And that's very fair. But not all your players are that smart, and more to the point, their characters may not be that smart. They may be incredibly intelligent human beings, but they're playing a dumb barbarian, and that can add some flavor, but agency is important to me. So I think that for the Amber Temple, it's highly, highly recommended to go through what I mean, there's a lot, but I think Dragna Carter really nails it with his suggestions. The powers are enhanced, so it's better in that one. The players are able to make the deal, knowing that there might be a long-term cost, but that corruption takes place slowly. The more they use that power, the more likely they are to become corrupted, and that's a Dragna Carta modification, not as is. As is, you take the deal, you roll charisma. If you fail, you're evil. End of story. Um, and so conceivably, again, why it's a bad idea as written, is that when players learn that, they're gonna gamble and take their chance. And what happens when you get that player that wants to touch every amber sarcophagi and just roll that d20 and see how long until he gets corrupted? And that can destroy a party because evil characters are not fun, and more importantly, very few people, in my opinion, know how to play an evil character successfully. And by successfully, I mean in a way that doesn't destroy the party and doesn't result in real world confrontations and arguments, which I think are sometimes inevitable in D&D, because if you care about something, you're going to be passionate. And when you're passionate, emotions come into play. But there's that line that you know you don't cross. And I, as a DM, try to avoid creating situations that are likely to push players over that line. So enhancing the dark powers here, I think, really makes the Amber Temple more inviting. It enhances a lot of it for later fights, and in a way allows the players to have their story arc of corruption being done without taking away agency, which again is really important to me. And so that takes us finally to Castle Ravenloft, and how you get there is really DM's call, or what events have transpired through the story. A common trope is Irina is she's been kidnapped, because you guys, hopefully your players aren't bringing her with them everywhere through Barovia, especially if they're doing dangerous missions. So they've stashed her somewhere safe. Strahd finds that, gets her to Ravenloft, and says the wedding's in 2 or 3 nights, and that allows your players to have their last prep session and get ready for the final fight. Because you DM how you want to, but like a situation where players have just had an enormous battle at the Amber Temple and are utterly exhausted, and then have to go right to Castle Ravenloft to confront and battle Strahd. It's just not a fun time for your players. It's taken you at least a year, if not 2 years, to get to this point. So give them the bone here, and let's make this a fun opportunity and make it as engaging as possible. And that's really my advice when it comes down to Castle Ravenloft. As designed, I think it's fantastic. It's so inviting, just how detailed and how many floors there are to Ravenloft. And there are some great third-party artists that have their work on Reddit that are free for a DM to use if you use virtual tabletop, or even if you want to print out or use the map as a printout. Much better than the in-book graphics. That's another quick complaint with just Wizards in general, is that we're paying 30, maybe $60, depending on the book, for the material. Invest in some decent maps, people. Like, your players want to use that. I don't want a black and white map to immerse my players in. Like, this is 2025. I can spend 10 seconds on AI creating an image better than the content Wizards of the Coast is putting out officially. And I just think we can do better than that. But I'm getting sidetracked here. Back to Castle Ravenloft. Um, Make it a challenge for your players, because Strahd is where all my critiques culminate, right? Because as written, he can be cheap as hell. He can transverse, he can just float through walls, floors, he can attack and move without provoking opportunity attacks. And so if your players are very two-dimensional, in reality, like, they don't have the fly spell. Strahd can hover at any point he wants to. He can just float through walls and go, that's, well, they have to go down 2 or 3 sets of stairs. Strahd can make that entire motion, and that just creates gaps, right? So if Strahd goes up a floor and your players have to run up a floor to get to him, when they all coalesce at the stair step, Strahd can just fire one fireball and do 30 points of damage to your entire party in one hit before he then shifts through the walls again and they're unable to attack. And so it's a very cat and mouse, and I'm not going to tell you how to do that because I don't know if there's I don't believe there's a one size fits all solution to that, because I firmly believe that every D&D campaign should be curtailed and customized towards your party. That is like my final parting advice for running this is, do not get caught up on what you think it should be. Like, you have the big outline, of course, and they're going to end up fighting Strahd, but how they get there and their motivations, let those happen organically. Let your players have opinions and let the story go in a way so that they can get invested in it. Because if you've taken my advice and, you've researched this campaign, you've tweaked these areas to where it doesn't feel cheap before, the Strahd fight isn't going to feel as cheap if you do it well, because they build up to this. The fights have gotten progressively harder. It wasn't just a random, like, this one was a 9 and this one was a 3. Oh, we were level 9 when we came back to this level 4 area, so we just cleaned it. It wasn't even a threat to us. Like, there's none of that variability present here. Like, it's on the DM to learn, so know your party, what they like, and how they enjoy the game. But presumably, if your players are able to get Strahd basically cornered down and within the sunlight, they can quickly beat him down. He turns into a mist, descends into the catacombs of Ravenloft towards his coffin, where he is staked, and the game is over. One note, like, my players, when I finished DMing it, they really wanted to know what happens next. What are we going to do? And as written, it says Strahd comes back and DX number of days, and it's going to repeat itself. You go with that if you want to. Um, I feel that's kind of a bad story. Like, what the hell did we do this for then? Like, nothing else matters. It's an option, you do what you want. I kind of, like, you guys saved it. Who knows what's going to happen? There's dark forces at play. The Amber Temple gives you plenty of story to work with in terms of dark vestiges. And if any of your players made a deal or get corrupted, there's opportunity there. So just think about that. Think about what your players want and what's going to have a good time for them. And I think if you DM through that lens, come back and look at this stuff and say, where is this going to cause a problem for my players? Because I know that when they think about a conflict or a confrontation, they go about it this way, and I don't want to do things that are going to punish them for their way of having fun. So Curse of Strahd, ultimately, yes, I recommend it, but it does require a lot of work on the DM, and that goes true for all campaigns, but this one especially more so than the others I've run. This requires a lot more customization and DM rifting, if you will, because without it, it's just very boring and doesn't pull your players in well. But that's what I think. I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know. But until next time, take care.